Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks, to all of our listeners from around the world. Welcome to the first of two August 2020 Tips and Tricks webinars around LogRhythm 7.5. This session is titled, What's New in LogRhythm 7.5? My name is Colby Schwartz, and I'm the Customer Marketing Manager here at LogRhythm. For this session, I'm excited to host a couple tenured LogRhythm employees. Specifically, I'm joined by Matt Willems, Product Manager, and Josh Feldman, Product Owner. Today, Matt and Josh will discuss the new features of LogRhythm version 7.5. They'll cover the business value and show a demo of each feature in action. But before we start, I'd like to run through a few announcements and housekeeping items. As the first announcement, you may have heard that we are transforming Rhythm World into a digital experience. We have multiple panels with customers and industry experts, content sessions with 6 different tracks, and interactive online activities, including log wars, capture the flag, hands-on labs, and regional group discussions. And the best part is, Rhythm World 2020 is completely free and available from anywhere across the globe. Registration is live at logrhythm.com/rhythmworld. So if you haven't signed up, go sign up now. And for my second announcement, if you're listening to this presentation and you would like to upgrade to version 7.5, which I'm sure all of you will want to do, but you need a little assistance to take advantage of everything it has to offer, make sure you sign up for our latest services promotion. This promotion allows you to purchase PS days to upgrade to LogRhythm 7.5, and at the end of it, we will give you 2 days of PS for free. You can use these extra days on health check assessments, tuning, use case recommendations, pretty much anything else that you need. If you're looking to take advantage of this promotion, please contact your CSM or your sales team to take advantage of it. As a couple housekeeping items, all audience members are on mute during the webinar for audio quality. If you have any questions during the presentation, please ask them through the Ask a Question feature on your control panel, and we'll get to them. And then finally, today's session will be recorded and posted in the video section on the community under Videos, Tips and Tricks Webinars. So you can find that and previous webinars or Tips and Tricks webinars there on the community. So with that, let's begin. Josh, why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Josh Feldman. I've been at LogRhythm for the past 4 years. I'm a product owner for the Polyglots engineering team, and my team is responsible for the web console, the mediator, and AIE cache drawdown.
Cool. And my name is Matt Willems, product manager for the company for about 8 years now. Actually started out on the research side in LogRhythm Labs, working on machine data intelligence research. Worked on Analytics Copilot for a while and then came over to the product side. Currently own Analyst Workflow and Platform UX from the product perspective. Want to thank all of you for being here today. First thing we want to do is go through a real quick agenda and just kind of set the stage for what we want to talk about this morning. We'll go through a real quick intro and kind of some background information about 7.5, and then actually, like Colby said, walk through a lot of the new features in 7.5. Kind of from a description, business value, what are we trying to solve with this feature, and then actually do a quick demo of the feature so you can get a better idea of how it's actually going to impact your workflow. We've got a handful of kind of smaller miscellaneous updates that went into 7.5, and then hoping to hold some time at the end for Q&A. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in and kind of talk about a little bit of the background information on 7.5. And I really like to start with the foundation. So where did 7.5 come from? And, some time ago, you guys, our customers and our leadership really made it clear that quality is job number one in LogRhythm engineering. So we took a serious, hard look at quality and, really tried to take that to heart. And we've really seen the benefits of that. We see far fewer defects reaching the field, especially when it comes to the kind of critical system downtime or data integrity types of defects. And, with that solid foundation in 7.4, that's been one of our highest quality feature releases that we've ever had, we really wanted to build on top of that and maintain that quality while also delivering some key feature improvements. Other ways that we're kind of supporting that quality initiative are doing things like making smaller scoped releases more frequently. That way we're able to push out updates more frequently, and keep the scope small to hopefully actually introduce fewer system impacting defects. Other things that we're doing to kind of help drive that initiative are decoupling as many parts of the platform as we can. And you're seeing that in the system monitor agent and open collector, where we're really trying to keep those decoupled so that as new collection interfaces and bug fixes and things like that are being shipped in versions of open collector and system monitor, you can actually adopt those parts of the platform without having to do a full system update. So some ways that we're trying to make adopting the various parts of the LogRhythm platform a little bit easier and keep the quality as high as we possibly can. And then, I think the next thing that we should take a look at is really what are the big themes around 7.5? What are we trying to accomplish here? And where I really want to start that is what are some of the challenges that we're seeing in the field that we can help address with our software? The first one is going to be analyst workflow. These are the end users of our platform, the people that are working in LogRhythm day to day. There are some challenges there that we really want to go after. Things like getting visibility into the relationships between users and hosts, rather than just single aggregations. Trying to make more analysts more effective in building and using filters and getting access to the right data. And then actually looking at live data, so watching parsing changes, tracking active incidents, things like that. Another big theme that you'll see in the 7.5 timeframe that applies a little less specifically to 7.5, but we'll talk about that in just a second, is access to cloud data. As cloud-first initiatives and cloud-native businesses and applications gain even more adoption, we definitely understand that there is mission-critical data in cloud platforms, in SaaS applications and infrastructure as a service infrastructure. And that's data that's absolutely critical to having complete visibility of your infrastructure and of your security landscape. So trying to make the onboarding of that data as quick and easy as possible while maintaining a lot of flexibility around what data can be collected and how it's collected is also a theme that you'll see around 7.5 quite a lot. And then third, one of the challenges that we wanted to face, that we wanted to take on is how third-party platforms and organizations integrate LogRhythm. We've traditionally had this SOAP API that has some challenges around it. It's not the newest when it comes to kind of modern development practices. So doing some work there to kind of modernize those interfaces. So what work are we doing to actually build toward these themes? And we're going to go into more detail on a number of these items, but just at a real quick high level, for analyst workflow and improving the efficiency of an individual security analyst using LogRhythm. Like I mentioned, the node link graph is a great way to now get a picture of the relationships that are present in log data rather than just individual logs, individual URLs and hashes. Now you can actually see some relationships. We've seen a lot of adoption of our Lucene Helper, or of our Lucene filtering, and we wanted to make that experience a little bit easier with this Lucene Helper feature. And then, another big one that has been a long time coming is tail in the web console. So we'll get into more detail on that a little bit later. Around the challenge of cloud data collection, our answer for cloud data collection is definitely Open Collector. Open Collector went GA not too long ago, kind of in the 7.5 timeframe. That's why you see it mentioned in this material. The nice thing is, if you want to know more about Open Collector, we're actually doing some tips and tricks webinars. We have already done a couple, and there's some more to come on working with Open Collector. So if you have any questions on that, I'd highly encourage you to check out one of those webinars, either the recordings that are already up on community or some of the upcoming content. And then when it comes to integrations, especially around API access to LogRhythm, we've made a handful of improvements to our admin API for things like managing log sources, managing system monitor agents, managing users in the platform as part of our admin API, and then introduced an all-new API, a RESTful search API to start to pull some functionality over from the SOAP API into these newer RESTful patterns. So that's kind of the high level of what we want to cover today. There's a couple other things sprinkled in that we want to give some attention to. So let's go ahead and dive right in and start looking at a couple of these in more detail. So the first one that we want to bring up wasn't actually mentioned at the top, but we definitely think that it's going to be pretty impactful, and that's actually introducing a new documentation site for our customers. So this actually replaces the web console help and the client console help and some of the documentation that you would see links to through community and things like that. And it brings it all together into a single location, so you always know where to go to get the most up-to-date LogRhythm product documentation. That actually covers our entire product suite. Not just the SIEM, but also Sysmon, Netmon, Open Collector, Threat Intel Service, all of that kind of stuff is now all integrated in this one documentation site. One of the other added benefits of the new docs site is that, it's going to be more searchable because it's a more modern interface. But it also means that you're always looking at up-to-date information for the version of LogRhythm that you're running. We can make updates to that documentation out of band of the SIEM updates. So if something comes up that we need to update our documentation, it doesn't require a software update on your end in order to actually see that updated documentation. So it's a really handy feature in that regard. And I highly encourage you guys to check it out. We don't have something specific to demo, but it's going to be available for all users. You can get to it through the product itself by opening the help menu. You can also just navigate to it and start browsing through the documentation right there. So it's a really handy one. Moving right along from there, we're getting into the theme that I spend the vast majority of my time on, which is analyst workflow, how security analysts actually interact with the LogRhythm product. And the first one of those is the Lucene Helper. So I mentioned a little bit as we were going through the introduction, but the Lucene filtering feature has been a really successful feature within LogRhythm. It helps analysts really drill down to the information that's most pertinent for whatever they're working on. It lets you do things like take an entire dashboard and filter it down to a specific subset of data, or put two widgets side by side and filter them in different ways so that you're seeing different sets of data in each one. But what we found with that feature, some of the feedback we got, was that it's not the easiest to use. Not everybody knows Lucene query syntax, which is completely understandable. And even for users who aren't familiar with the syntax, we did some things to make it a little more challenging. So we were actually exposing the backend database schema, kind of an older version of the schema, rather than our modern go-forward schema that you see everywhere else in the product. And that inconsistency made it pretty difficult to actually successfully build Lucene filters. So we introduced this feature to really address both of those, to do the kind of syntax highlighting, to make it easy to construct these filters, but also translate the fields so that you're actually working with the more modern schema. So that's kind of a quick overview of what this feature is and why you might be interested in it. But I think really to drive it home and see what's going on, it's really best to actually see it in action. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh for a moment to actually go through a quick demo of how you use the Lucene Helper.
Thanks, Matt. So one of the places where the Lucene Helper can be used is on the dashboard. If you click on the widget filter icon in the upper right, you would get the filter with Lucene box. And here, what we do is use type ahead values to build our Lucene query. So if I type in C, you're going to see, or O, you're going to see every variable that has an O in it. Let's select classification, and then you see it uses classification name, which is the filter name. Next, we're going to have a drop down of all the available values for that variable name. Let's select access granted and hit the blue OK button to initialize. And that's going to bring us to an analyze page that has the custom filter applied to it. Another place this can be used is in the widget filtering. So if you hit the gear icon to get the inspector open, you'll see the widget filter. So let's type in common event, and we'll use access granted. Now, if you have a value that is long and you want to use type ahead, I'm going to suggest using quotes. So if you quote access granted, and then you could see that the dropdown will filter so you get that value. And you see also the widget is updating as I type. You are allowed to use logical steps, so and or, to build complex filters. And remember to save once you have your filter criteria in the box.
Cool. So, Josh, with that, let's jump on to the next analyst workflow feature that we wanted to highlight for 7.5, and that's the node link graph. Many of you have probably seen a little bit of content around the node link graph since we've been talking about it for a little while, but I thought it was worth diving into just a little bit here. So first and foremost, what we're looking at here is a new visualization for the web console. It's a visualization widget that works on dashboards and analyze pages, just like most of the rest of the widgets. But the idea here is we're looking for relationships in log data rather than just kind of a single point aggregation. So the typical topic widgets, you're going to pick a metadata field, and essentially what it's doing is counting the number of times a particular value shows up in that metadata field, which is an incredibly powerful analytic tool, but it does miss out on another important aspect, which is the relationship in data. So network traffic might represent a relationship between two hosts on the network. Authentication data might represent a relationship between a user and a host. And account creation, account modification might represent a relationship between multiple users. So there's a lot of really valuable data present in that type of activity in log data. And this visualization is really meant to present that data in a way that it's easy to measure kind of the sphere of influence for a user or a host. We've got some competitors and other products on the market that do some similar types of visualization. But we really tried to set the bar high with this one and do some things that are going to make it stand out. So doing things like decorating it with the classification and common event, so you can actually understand what type of activity is represented there, and doing in things like the host and entity structure and true identity that Josh is going to show us in just a second. So I'm really excited to get this one released to the field. And with that, let's turn things over to Josh and a quick demo.
So the node link graph is available to all users regardless of their type. And what you want to do is hit the Add Widget button at the top. And if you scroll about halfway down, you're going to see node link graph. Click and drag onto the dashboard or analyze page, and you're going to want to give this thing some space. It is pretty big, and the more space, the easier it is to read. What you have here is the node link graph. Circles represent users, squares represent hosts. And if you hover over a host, you get the information for that. And if you hover over a user, you will get the information regarding that person. If you have true identity set up, it will pull information from Active Directory to better identify the host. We have a level of zoom, and you could see the visual connections. Let's go into the settings. The first thing you can do is change the title. Next, you can change the number of nodes that are in the graph. You could go up to 500, but to be honest, I think 500 is a little busy. And it also takes a minute or two for it to fully render and stop jiggling, as I call it. The key to this widget, in my opinion, is going to be a widget filter. So you specify what exactly you're looking for. In this case, let's narrow it down to myself. So we'll pick user impacted identity, and then we'll select Josh.Feldman. And let's do an or. User origin identity is also Josh.Feldman. And you see that the node link graph is updating as I type in these filters. Let's zoom out. And if we wait for it to stop moving and then hover over the main dot, you're going to see that that's going to be me, Josh Feldman. It has my picture from Active Directory, and it's listing the number of common events for each event connected to me. Next, we have the various link types, host origin to host impacted, host origin to user origin. If you unselect those, then you will not see those connections. It is possible to have a graph with no connections. Lastly, we have the classification colors, and this is going to color the link between the graphs, depending on the classification of the logs present. So let's add a new one. Let's add in access granted. And there we see all the yellow lines represent the access granted activity for this user. Again, remember to save at the end so that you The settings are here when you come back. And that's Node Link Graph.
Nice. Thanks, Josh. That's a great demo. You can see why it's such a powerful kind of visual analytics tool. Like I said, for things like measuring the sphere of influence of the user to see who else they're connected to, what hosts they're logging into. So it's a really, really powerful tool. So that's a great demo. Thanks for that. Cool. So thirdly, on the analyst workflow side, we wanted to talk about tail in the web console. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, but this is another feature that I'm just really, really excited to finally get released to you guys. And the big reason on this one is, from what I can tell, it's the single most common feature request that we've gotten for the web console since the web console was introduced. So this one's been a little while in coming. If you're familiar with the tail functionality in the client console, this is going to look really familiar, although I'll let Josh get into the details on the demo. But the idea here is that if you need to track anything live in the web console, whether that's actually an active incident, you want to watch what a user is doing, a host is doing, where a process is running, things like that. It's great for that kind of use case, as well as just some of the administrative tasks like checking to see if collection is working properly on a log source, monitoring for parsing changes. If you're editing an MPE rule, you can actually see the updates to that parsing live, things like that. So it's a really handy tool, and let's turn things over to Josh and check out a quick demo of Tail.
Thanks, Matt. So for Tail, you first do start with an investigation. So up at the top, you would click the search button to bring up the search dialog box. And now at the top, we have what I'm calling the tail toggle. If you turn it on, it's going to change duration into it's going to change time frame into duration. Duration is how long you want the tail to run, 1 minute up to 15. Unlike the client console, the tail does not pull any historical data in the web console. Next, let's put in some criteria. We're going to do user origin is not blank, but you could add in filtering and grouping as you would do with a normal investigation. You can see the task card at the bottom. And after a minute or two, we're going to get initial results. Double click on that to open up an analyze page in the new tab. And here we have an analyze page. This page is going to load data as it comes in. So as the tail is happening and as activity happens, we'll get updates. Additionally, we have the megagrid at the bottom, which is showing the logs as well. This is going to update as well as we get in new data. Let's give it a second. Okay, you can see up at the top that the widgets are now updating. So momentarily, there we go. There we have 101 new logs, load latest. When we click load latest, those new logs are going to load into the megagrid. And throughout the tail, that load latest will keep reappearing. We can see here that the tail has 3 minutes and 40 seconds left. We're not going to do a demo for that long, but I assure you it will complete until the duration is done. And that's Tail in the web console.
Nice, that's great. So you guys can see why this is such a powerful tool for monitoring anything that's actually happening live that you need to keep an eye on. And yeah, once again, we're super excited to get this one released out to you guys to start playing with, start getting some value out of. So moving from analyst workflow into the other big pillar, big theme that we wanted to talk about, let's talk a little bit about kind of integration points with LogRhythm. The first one that we wanted to take a look at is actually the new search API. That's a RESTful API, so it's following modern API patterns, and it really provides a powerful integration point with the SIEM for doing things like initiating searches and then monitoring the status of that search and eventually retrieving the results once it's complete. So any kind of third-party product that you would need in order to perform this kind of integration, whether that's a third-party ticketing system that might have to issue a search, or even doing things like querying data out to pull into a data lake or into another analysis tool, things like that are going to be really common use cases for this API. So we can take a real quick look at the API, although APIs are a little tough to demo. So I think we've got some documentation to look at.
Thanks, Matt. So let's start off with the documentation. So if you go to localhost 8504, did you push play, Matt? No. So it's not just document. Okay.
There it goes.
So here's the Search API documentation. It's located at localhost 8505/lr-search.api/docs. This will tell you all the various criteria that the Search API will accept and what is needed in order to submit a valid request. Using your favorite API test tool, for example, Postman, we will do a quick demo. What happens is the request happens in two parts. The first is you do the search task, and then you request the results. So for this example, we're going to request 100 logs that have occurred over the past 24 hours. And when we submit this request, we're going to get back a task ID. Let's copy that task ID. And you're going to put that into your search results API call. Replace that task ID with the GUID ID and hit send. And that's going to give you the logs that actually return the logs from that search query. Here's a trick for attending this seminar. If you want, you could build the search query in the web console itself. So let's do search, and let's do user origin. User impacted identity equals myself, Joshua Feldman, and hit search. We'll give that a minute for the results to start coming back from the data indexer. But the trick is we're going to go into SQL. And if you log into SQL and open up the LogRhythm EMDB database, and in tables, there's going to be the web search table. We're going to right-click and select the top 1,000 rows. However, you might need more rows depending on how busy your console is. The very last row in this table is going to be our query that we just did. What you could do is right-click and copy the search criteria field and paste that directly into the API call. There you can see at the top we have, this is user identity is Joshua Feldman, but this way you could have a really complex query in the web console and not have to worry with the API language. Hit the send, and that's going to give us a task ID. And like before, we'll take that task ID and paste it into our search results query. And that's going to get us the logs that match our results. And
Cool.
that's the search API.
That's great. That's a really handy way to build complex criteria and then see how to actually build that query payload to move over to the API. So that's a really handy way to get started with API development. Cool. So thanks for that demo on the search API. The next integration point that we wanted to look at just a little bit are the true identity APIs, where we have added some capabilities for true identity, specifically around the management of identities. And those are going to be the ability to perform merging and retiring identities. It definitely happens once in a while that something goes wrong in a true identity sync and you get data that you didn't expect, data that you don't necessarily want. Well, now we have a couple of tools for managing those identities in some new ways. So you can take duplicate identities and merge those into a single identity, or retire off identities if they're synced incorrectly, things like that. So just a handy way to kind of perform some management and get a little bit more accurate true identity data. So moving on from there are a couple other things that we wanted to take a look at. One of which is the expanding role-based access control functionality. So we've added a good number of controls for role-based access to 7.5. These are things that we use in our SaaS offering, LR Cloud, but they're also available for any LogRhythm user if you need to build out very specific granular access for certain users. This is done at the role level, the user profile. And we've added controls for things like importing and managing threat response, user management, performing knowledge-based syncs, managing system monitor agents, and then a number of things around widgets in the web console. So delegating access to the health monitoring widgets, the component status, database monitoring, things like that. And then a handful of others around the web console for things like threat map. We also have some additional expansion role-based access control around AIE alarms and case management. So there's a lot going on there. And then, like I said at the beginning, we've got a handful of smaller improvements that didn't necessarily get all the way to being a feature, but nonetheless, some pretty impactful things in here. So I'll let Josh take over and kind of go through this list of other assorted improvements in 7.5.
Sure, Matt. So first, .NET had been upgraded from 4.5.2 to 4.7.2. Users can now choose to only monitor flat files for a certain number of days rather than go back forever historically. The window host wizard now communicates properly on port 636 for secure LDAP. The client access card authentication has been updated to support the new Department of Defense format. And error messaging was added to the log source virtualization template manager to alert users of conflicts, and about 24 more improvements as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. We're always working really hard to make sure we're getting kind of the maximum amount and right amount of stuff into any given feature release. We definitely know it's been a little while since we had a big feature release like this, so we tried to pack it full of really good content that's going to help make your LogRhythm deployment more usable, more effective for your users, and more stable and easier to integrate with other products. So we're really excited about 7.5. We've already seen some great feedback from the field since it's been in the field for a few weeks, and we're already hard at work on the next version of LogRhythm, and a lot of great functionality that's going to go into the next version. So lots of stuff that we're excited about. So that's what we had to talk about with 7.5. Definitely happy to take some questions at this point. Colby, you've got some.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. You do have a bunch of questions, which is great. Let's just start from the top. I did my best to group them kind of based off of the stuff that you went through, but a couple jump around. But we'll start off with, can you use logical operators in Lucene filters?
Yes, they are available. So you can build complex queries using and or, just the basic Boolean logic.
Yeah. And if I remember right, you can use parentheses for grouping queries. You can build some pretty complex nested queries in there as well.
Yes, that is correct.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Can you use Lucene filters to search?
It's a really good question. So today, Lucene filtering, as the name implies, is really used for filtering. Lucene-based search is something that we've definitely taken a look at. We know there are competitors out there that offer some similar functionality, and something that we're definitely exploring. I would highly encourage you, if this is something that is going to be valuable for you, definitely get a feature request logged or chat about it on community. We monitor the community forums and community Slack channel really closely for this kind of use case. So if that's something that we can do to help out your workflow, definitely let us know, and we'll start a dialogue.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Matt. Next I have, do I need a new license for LogRhythm 7.5?
Yeah, great question. So 7.5 does require a new license. One thing that we should really point out is the process for requesting a new license is a little bit different now. The page that contains all the documentation and downloads for 7.5 also has a link to request a license file. That goes straight into the queue to get a license generated, and you'll just get that updated license in a response, assuming you have a current support contract. And it's actually really critical to do that since the license is going to be required to start up the services once the upgrade's complete.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. This one's on the node link graph. Could you use a list of users or group on the node link graph?
Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to incorporate lists into the filtering of node link graph at this time. You could build a really complex query, but you would have to list each person individually.
Yeah.
Roger. Another one for node link. Can the node link graph have its own page, or is it only available on the main dashboard? It would be great to have it correlated during investigation queries.
Yeah, so the node link graph can be added to the analyze page. So when you do an investigation, it is available. Some people don't know that those pages can be edited and altered and saved.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And is that just simple as like editing and playing with the widget sizes, or what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, you could add additional widgets and expand the widgets on the page already, and then you'll have the ability to save just like you do with a normal dashboard.
Cool, thank you. This one's moving on to tail. Are there plans to bring in historical tail information into the tail search functionality?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we tried to kind of keep tail in a reasonable scope, and so for that reason, when we were doing some early research on it, that was one of the spots that we found that users were pretty willing to say, if I'm looking for historical data, I'll run a search. If I'm looking for data coming in the future, I'll run a tail. But it's something that we've definitely got our eye on. We love to collect feedback on features that are recently released or things that we worked on some time ago. So yeah, that's great feedback. And if you have any more detail on kind of how that might work, what types of searches that you would be running that combine historical data as well as forward-looking data, that would be great information. If we can get that passed along, we'd love to talk more about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Another one on tail. Are CVS files still available from tail on the web console, and will tail still be available on the client console?
Yeah, you could, once the tail is complete, using the MagnaGrid, you can export a CSV of all the logs that have come in. And we haven't touched the client console, so tail is still there and works as it has before.
Awesome. This next question actually helps me transition into the next topic of APIs. This says, can you tail via API?
Unfortunately, that is not possible at this time. It does a search and then it returns the results. So we do not have the ability for a live API tail at the moment. Perfect.
And where can the customers find a download link to the search API?
Good question. So that's actually one of the big reasons that we wanted to go with this more modern pattern is these RESTful APIs are baked into the platform. Every time you upgrade your LogRhythm deployment, you're getting new versions of those APIs, you're getting new functionality, you're getting whole new APIs like the search API. So that's actually built into 7.5 and doesn't require a separate component installation like the SOAP API did.
Great, that's awesome. And then this is kind of going back to how it affects the new APIs affects the old APIs. How does the new API deprecate the previous SOAP API, i.e., will all of the automation tasks I created need to be recreated?
Yeah, really good question. So while the RESTful search API is eventually building toward deprecating the SOAP API, we don't have a specific date for that, so none of the functionality in the SOAP API has changed today. It's still available for 7.5, and if you built integrations on other recent versions, those integrations should still work fine. We do intend at some point to replace the rest of the functionality in the SOAP API with RESTful APIs, and eventually sunset that separate component. But we're not announcing that at this point. We'll definitely announce it well in advance so that you can start to migrate those types of integrations off to the newer APIs.
Cool. Thank you for that. Switching gears again, will restricted admins be able to use all widgets, not just topics?
That's a really good question. So I think there are still a couple of widgets that may not be accessible to all users. I don't remember for sure. But in 7.5, we did add a number of new widgets that previously were only available to certain classes of users, to global admins or things like that, and add those to RBAC. It might mean that in some circumstances you would want to elevate an analyst to a restricted admin and then restrict that down so they only have little or no administrative access, and they're just gaining new functionality through role-based access control. So I can't recall if there are any specific widgets that now don't have access in 7.5. Maybe some things around case management, but that would probably be it. It's pretty close to complete parity.
Awesome. Next question. Does this version provide an easy way to identify a bad AI engine rule that is causing issues?
That's a really good question. So there's nothing specific in 7.5 that I can think of that changes the process of kind of troubleshooting AIE rules or tuning AIE rules. It's definitely a great point of feedback. It's something that we know can be a challenge of identifying one rule out of many that might be causing trouble. And if I recall correctly, we've actually done some previous webinars, other tips and tricks webinars on tuning and troubleshooting AIE. So that might be worth a look there as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, Matt, I can validate that comment. There has been some tips and tricks in the past that you can use to, again, as Matt said, tune your deployment, troubleshoot the deployment, and definitely part of that is tuning your AI engine rules. So definitely go check out the community under the videos tab. So it's the same place if you're watching this on demand, same place you can access this video, but you can go back and take a peek at some of those different tips and tricks that the support team and PS guys have put together for you. And that's going to be towards the beginning of the year. So yeah, absolutely, Matt, they are available on demand for all of our customers to access.
Nice.
Okay, so it looks like only a couple more questions have come in. So this one says, upgrading to 7.5 does not require the purchase for professional service, only if we need it, correct?
Yep,
and I can actually.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, no, for sure. You can definitely upgrade a LogRhythm deployment. 7.5 really isn't that different from an upgrade perspective from the recent 7.4 releases. The same process is basically involved. The documentation is also posted right there. So it should be a pretty easy process. But yeah, Colby, if you had anything to add, go right ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is just to note, obviously, you're referencing the announcement that I made at the beginning of it. Just to kind of go off what Matt said, you do not need PS to upgrade, but for those customers that do need a little extra hand or are a little short of time, our team is here to help you do that. And like I said, if you purchase a 7.5 upgrade, you get 2 days of PS for free to do with whatever you please. So that's a great little perk that our customer success team has put together for you. But no, you do not need PS in order to upgrade. Okay, and I think the last question I got here for you guys is this one is, how do I get LogRhythm 7.5 if I'm a LogRhythm Cloud customer?
Oh, great question. So one of the nice things about LogRhythm Cloud is you actually don't have to worry about any of the upgrades at all. One of the big benefits of LogRhythm Cloud. So it sounds like there's an SLA in place that they do their validation testing after the software goes GA. They start a lot of that testing prior to the GA date. But then within a certain amount of time, they get that rolled out to customers. That's usually done in several phases. So I would recommend reach out to your account team, and if you're a LogRhythm Cloud customer and curious about 7.5, and they should be able to give you more details on the time frame. But I think it's usually within a few weeks.
Actually, they've all been upgraded.
Great.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. I think that's about it from when it comes to the question side of things. So thank you guys for the great information. I want to thank Matt and Josh for an awesome presentation. It was a pleasure having you both. I'd also like to thank all of you customers and partners for joining us today. Hope you found the presentation insightful, and please join me next week on August 27th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time for a related session outlining how to upgrade to version 7.5. So this one walked all the way through the business benefits and the different features. This next one will go through how to upgrade, tips and tricks, things that we're running into on our end to make it easier for you guys. So again, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Josh. Hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Toby.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
All right.